Hi, everyone. I think I finally figured out retirement. I'm going to have AI do all my work, and then I'm going to just collect the paycheck.
I think your dean may have some follow-up questions for you there.
You think? Well, apparently, there's actually a proposal that says if AI companies become incredibly valuable, maybe everyone should receive something that we're now starting to call an AI dividend.
Wait, so the robot goes to work and I get paid?
That is today's discussion. So let's get this show on the road, as they say.
Welcome to The Professor is Live, where we begin with a story from the news and ask the question that matters most. What does leadership look like now? Artificial intelligence is changing work, education, business, healthcare, creativity, and everyday life. Host Mark Salisbury and producer Rikko Smart explore these changes through humor, expert guests, conversations with ChatGPT, and practical insights that help us lead with more brains, more courage, and more heart. Because in the age of intelligent machines, human judgment still matters.
This is not the same without the intro, is it, Rico?
Well, no, that really adds something to it.
Today's story comes from the Associated Press. A proposal recently introduced by Senator Bernie Sanders would create what many people are calling an AI dividend. The basic idea is simple. If artificial intelligence creates tremendous wealth, should some of that wealth belong to everyone? It's a fascinating economic question, but I think there's actually an even bigger question. And that is, what should we do if AI dramatically changes the relationship between work and prosperity?
I knew there was a reason I was being nice to ChatGPT.
Well, let's go and see, what could go wrong with this kind of thing, right? And so it's really, and people know that's the cue, it's time for another fine educational film from your people at The Professor is Live. Today's film explores what happens when you pin all of your dreams on a big payout from AI.
It's my AI dividend.
Well, don't spend it all in one place.
Exactly. And for those people who are listening to us on a podcast, you don't want to go all the trouble of seeing the video part of this. Is a man goes out, happily opens his mailbox. Inside is a letter. He smiles and says, "It's my AI dividend." He opens it, and inside is a check for $3.27. And he looks sad. All right. To help us think through this fascinating idea, we're joined by economist Dr. Tyler Schipper from the University of St. Thomas. Tyler has spent a great deal of time thinking about technology, productivity, and what the future of work may actually look like. So let's go and see what Tyler has to say about all of this. The Professor is Live welcomes Dr. Tyler Schipper, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of St. Thomas. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, let's talk about an idea called the universal AI dividend. Boy, try to say that fast. About 3 or 4.
I'm just going to go with AI dividend. I can't, the universal thing is going to get messed up all the time. So I'm going to go with AI dividend. Yeah.
I think that's probably a good idea. Well, first of all, What is it and who supports the idea? I've heard names like Bernie Sanders has been given a lot of credit for pushing this, but other players too that might be on the other side of the political spectrum, like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about what this idea is?
Mm-hmm. So the basic idea behind an AI dividend would be that Americans would have some stock or equity in AI companies. And from that stock or equity, they would get paid some kind of dividend or payback from the revenue that's generated by these companies. And the exact form could look different. It could be, I think in Bernie Sanders' plan, there's actually like a sovereign wealth fund where the fund itself owns big chunks of some of these companies. And then every year, I think he has in there that it would pay out a 5% dividend to Americans in some way. So the details can shift a little bit, but the big idea is that there is some common ownership at the US government level, likely, of these biggest AI companies.
Okay.
And in terms of who's pushing, I think this speaks to like the weird American politics right now, where there is this strong strain of populism. And that means that populism can be both on the left and the right. And you're seeing a little bit of that in the push against some of these biggest AI companies. That President Trump is often known as more of a populist, as well as Bernie Sanders. And that's part of the reason why you're getting support from a plan like this from both sides. And I think ultimately that's going to tie into who maybe feels most scared about AI. It's both workers that have been displaced in future movements with technology. It's also white collar workers and liberals and new college grads that would maybe be more likely to support Bernie Sanders.
That's really interesting, and it also is, has a long backdrop in our history in America about private property and some things that we call our public goods and those ideas. And so why do supporters think the public deserves a share of AI's gains? And is it mainly about helping displaced workers, or is there a deeper philosophical argument behind all this?
And I've actually been thinking even more about this, and I actually have kind of two answers here now. And one, the one that's most often brought up is the fact that these AI models can only exist because there's immense amounts of data out there that was generated by human beings. That is the source of why, as a human, you should get some kind of AI dividend, because you generated the materials that allowed these models to exist in the first place. And I think that is a compelling argument that, even just going about your day, you generate all kinds of data about where you went and what you bought. You never, maybe you signed the consent form somewhere when you filled out your credit card, but you're not really thinking about what you've consented to. Yeah. And that data is being used to train these models. And this would be one way of acknowledging that AI doesn't exist without the entire history of human experience up to this point. We're both at St. Thomas, and I think there's also an element of this that all humans deserve human dignity. And I think in the most scary versions of the future, at least for some people, where AI is a huge force in the economy, how do you ensure human dignity? And this could be one mechanism to do that. That you don't have to be doing something you don't always have to be putting in 50 hours of work in order to have enough to survive. If we have enough, we should be providing for people to have their own human dignity. So I think you can come at it from that angle as well, which I maybe don't always do as an economist, but I think in a future where AI is really, really big part of the economy, we might need to think about what does it mean to be human and what we deserve as humans.
I detect one of the things we've talked about off camera is one of the really big ideas behind all of this and where it could go. So let's save that for our blockbuster end here for this segment. And, it seems complicated to me, and especially, Bernie Sanders just released another kind of statement about this and how he sees it. And it seems kind of complex. How in the world could this thing actually be implemented?
Yeah. And we were talking off camera about some of those details, and some of those details in Bernie Sanders' plan. I admit that thinking through the implementation of it is very difficult. but it's a conversation starter. I don't think anybody expects that Bernie Sanders' plan today is going to be the one that ultimately takes form. But having conversations both on the left and right seems like a good avenue forward. One of the models that's been held up for this is actually the Alaska Permanent Fund, which is a way that Alaska shares its oil revenues. So any oil that comes from state lands, and then there's also some revenue sharing from federal lands, goes into essentially a fund that then pays out to average citizens, including men, women, and children. Everybody gets a chunk of this. A typical year, we're talking about $1,000 to $2,000. I've had friends that lived there when oil prices were higher, and it can go higher than that as well. The only issue I think when you hear those numbers is it doesn't necessarily say, "Oh, you lost your job. Here's $1,000, and that's going to make up for it." So we are talking about differences in scale potentially, right? That simply gaining revenue from oil in Alaska might be very different than the effect of AI in the future. But it still does provide a model where you can have a state-run fund that transfers money back to individuals that helps them support themselves.
Yeah, and isn't that what this is all about? I mean, we haven't really seen any real substantial impact or been measured in some way, but we have a lot of concern on both sides of the aisle and in all people who work for a living that this might have just a really major impact. And so all of this is kind of a little bit of a fear of the future, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And I want to be clear that my inkling is that this has to displace workers in some way, shape, or form, but also that I don't think economists know that for sure yet. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty about whether AI tends to be more complementary or more substitution for workers. And we're seeing a little bit of a pushback now as a lot of companies are starting to figure out how expensive it is to use AI just to do everything. And that would be the first step in experimentation where some firms are going to say, okay, we have really good uses for AI where it's much, much better than humans. And then there's some other places where AI works better with humans or humans can do it more cost effectively. So it's this idea in economics of comparative advantage. And it's been interesting to start seeing those articles about the costs of AI being too high for some firms. And it's a little bit of already a swinging back of the pendulum, trying to figure out where's the optimal usage of AI, even as it is always evolving.
Yeah, and there's also, you and I have talked a little bit about this off camera, is there's a really big idea behind this as well. And I kind of think about the idea that we could actually work less with some of this AI here. And I actually have a little bit of a story in my family. My father and my grandfather in the early part of the 20th century worked in the woods. They worked for lumber companies. And I remember my dad telling me that when the days got longer, they had to work longer. And they got the same pay as they did before. And I could see people going, if we have people working 80 hours a week here at one of our big companies here in America, man, what could they do? But I think there's some other visions about what we could do with that extra productivity.
Yes, and this is always a hard one to convince my students of when they're thinking about just going to the workforce about, isn't a future where we all get paid roughly the same amount, but we work less and spend more time with friends and family? Isn't that a better future? And if you want to dig into that, it also means that, if I decide to work 30 hours instead of 40 hours, it opens up a quarter of a job as well. And so a lot of people doing that means that we can still have lots of the workforce attached to a job while not having to put as many hours in, freeing up more time for friends, family, hobbies, other things that make you happy outside of work. And my hope is, again, is that this might go back to some of the things that most plague us right now about loneliness and lack of connection. That because so many workplaces have become not community-like, that there's not the same connection to work, people have become more lonely and less attached to their own families. And so this could be part of the movement back towards that work can be something that you choose to do, and you choose to put a lot of time into other things that you enjoy doing to find more meaning. So big, lofty ideas for sure, but it's something that I think AI makes possible in ways that other technologies haven't recently.
And I've spent my time in corporate America. I spent 11 years at the Boeing company as a scientist there, and I I don't think I have 40, or then I had 40 hours of creativity in me, because I spent it a lot of time, sometimes attending meetings that maybe didn't need to take place. And then also, writing reports that no one read. And it makes me think that maybe we might not lose so much with AI in terms of our overall ingenuity that we bring to our organizations and how that can translate into more productivity.
Those kinds of work culture shifts, I think, are hard to take the jump, but people figure out how to make them work. And one of those transitions would be that the work that really needs to get done would get prioritized. That stuff that is less important falls to the wayside. And at some point, as an economist would like to say, we find a new equilibrium where the important stuff's getting done with the time that's available to us. It's the however much time you devote to work is the time that will get filled up by work. And if we simply cut back on that time, we get the most important stuff done.
Oh, very good. Well, as always, it was a pleasure having you with us, Dr. Schipper. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Happy to do it.
And there we have it, right there. What struck me about this topic and the discussion we had with Tyler is that it really wasn't the politics that stood out to me. It was the possibility. And for more than a century, when you think about this, technology has mostly allowed us to produce more. Artificial intelligence, though, might be a different animal in the sense that it might allow us to rethink how much we work, what work we value, and what makes a meaningful life. So I know what people are thinking right now is, what in the world would ChatGPT think about this? I mean, you can't really have a discussion anymore without wondering, what would ChatGPT say? So let's ask ChatGPT, if AI creates extraordinary wealth, what should we as human beings be thinking about? And this is what ChatGPT said. We may need to think beyond productivity alone. Questions of fairness, opportunity, dignity, education, and purpose become increasingly important as AI changes work. History shows that major technological advances often require new institutions, new policies, and new ways of thinking. The specific solutions will differ, but thoughtful leadership will require balancing innovation with broad human benefit. And that's what ChatGPT says. So there you go. Now, I thought for sure, Rikko, you would have something to say about this. Something about changing our jobs. Well, maybe somebody on my side didn't do a good job at turning on your mic. Sorry about that.
Maybe AI was supposed to help us out there.
No kidding, I think it would help us produce this show. Anyway, what do you think about this?
I think that we as humans have to delve into thinking and defining what the future is that we want to build.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good insight. So I don't think today's episode was really about dividends, right? It's about the fact that teachers are asking, what should students prepare for? Business leaders are asking, how should organizations change? Families are asking, how will it fit into life? Governments are asking, how should prosperity be shared? And they're really, if you think about it, they're all asking the same kind of question. How do we make sure technological progress really becomes human progress? So let's ask our audience. I know we always get into trouble with this, Rikko, because people are working on other things or they don't know where that chat box is. But let's ask our audience, if AI dramatically increased productivity, what would you rather have? More income, more time, or a combination of both? So I'm going to pull out and see what we got cooking here in that chat box. Boy, I can almost hear the crickets in there. How about you, Rikko?
I think I hear someone eating a sandwich.
Yeah, I can see where that could be happening. Okay, well, that's what we have for right now, and I think,
Well, perhaps you have a quote for us today.
I do. I almost forgot about that. So thank you, Rikko, for reminding me. Today's quote is from John Maynard Keynes, very influential economist from the 20th century. And his quote is this: "The economic problem may be solved, and mankind will be faced with its real permanent problem: how to use his freedom from pressing economic cares." And that's what he said going on 90 years ago. So maybe artificial intelligence brings that question a little closer than we all expected. All right, we want to thank Dr. Tyler Schipper for helping us think through one of the biggest questions surrounding artificial intelligence today. And every week on The Professor is Live, we begin with a story from the news. But the real story typically isn't really about artificial intelligence. It's what we should do with it, how we should respond as AI changes our work, our organizations, and our lives, because technology may create extraordinary possibilities. But as you said just a few minutes ago, Rikko, it's up to us to determine who benefits from them. We'll see you next time on The Professor is Live.
The Professor is Live is hosted by Mark Salisbury and produced by Rikko Smart. Watch us live on LinkedIn, catch the replay on YouTube, or listen wherever you enjoy podcasts. To continue the conversation, visit theprofessorislive.com. There you'll find information about our speaking programs, executive briefings, leadership workshops, AI litigation consulting, and our upcoming Almost Live Leadership Seminar, a guided learning experience designed to help professionals lead with more brains, more courage, and more heart in the age of AI. Until next time, stay curious, stay optimistic, and keep leading with purpose.